Most of you aren't subscribed. Make sure to subscribe, as it helps out the channel. Without further ado, the series starts with our MC, kicked to the ground and mocked by noble mages, scoffing at our MC's commoner status. Giving our MC a chance, a soul mage steps up, offering our MC a chance to strike them down, but sadly our MC can only muster up a small ball of magic. Our MC recounts how magic is solely defined by which lineage one is born into, and no matter how hard someone works, they can never surpass those born into the correct family. The mage begins casting a spell of their own, instantly incinerating our MC, but our MC can't help but feel joy finally getting to experience what top-tier magic feels like. As a final wish, our MC wishes to be given more time to learn magic, but as his body finally disperses, our MC wakes up in front of several maids all adoring him. Quickly preparing a spell to defend himself, our MC blasts a massive hole in the castle he's in, all whilst the townsfolk celebrate the birth of the 7th prince of the Saloon Kingdom, hence our MC's new name is Lloyd. Several years later, the maids of the castle look everywhere for Lloyd, but Lloyd is clearly avoiding any attention, running into several guards only to ask them to keep his current location a secret. As Lloyd runs off, the guards wonder if they should grow closer to Lloyd, remembering how Lloyd is the 7th born in their family, so Lloyd most likely won't inherit the throne. Apparently, shortly after Lloyd was born, he immediately began speaking, reading spell books and even refusing breast milk, leading many to believe Lloyd was the reincarnation of William Bordeaux himself, the father of sorcery. Following Lloyd, he admits that he is unsure why he can remember his past life, but slipping past the maids, Lloyd makes it to the castle's library filled with hundreds of books. As Lloyd prepares to tuck into some books, Silpha appears, heading outside only to begin training Lloyd with wooden swords. Taking a quick break, Lloyd wonders why he still needs to train his swordplay, but Silpha states that it is proper etiquette for any noble to wield a sword, something Lloyd already knew having been with Silpha for 3 years. Wanting to get the training over with, Lloyd and Silpha take a stance, both dashing towards each other only to parry each other's slashes. Impressed that Lloyd has improved so much, Lloyd knows Silpha is still holding back, barely able to keep up as Lloyd has been secretly casting a copy spell to mimic Silpha's swordplay. Even still, due to Lloyd's smaller body and build, Silpha begins driving Lloyd into a corner, pushing him back. Assessing the situation, Lloyd tests out another skill to compensate for his childlike body, suddenly increasing his strength along with levitating his body. Now able to completely match Silpha's slashes and movement, Lloyd forces Silpha to take things more seriously, but when Lloyd attempts to weave in a sneak attack, Silpha catches Lloyd off guard. Having already known Lloyd was using magic, Silpha trips Lloyd, only to disarm and smack him on the head, revealing Lloyd's levitation magic. On top of things, Silpha points out that Lloyd's sword had been extended to give him better reach, but Silpha can't help but be amazed that Lloyd was able to cast 2 spells at once, something court mages struggle to do. As Silpha hugs Lloyd tight, Lloyd feels lucky that Silpha didn't recognize his physical enhancement spell nor his copy spell, meaning Lloyd was actually casting 4 spells at once. That evening, Silpha drags Lloyd with her to take a bath in the girls' bathing area, catching the attention of other maids as they tell Lloyd about a powerful demon sealed away in a book by the name of Grimoire, capable of wiping out their whole town. Silpha adds that the grimoire is hidden in an underground library, but suddenly the girls find it adorable Lloyd is acting strange, all fighting over whose bed Lloyd will be sleeping in tonight. Sneaking off, Lloyd grows intrigued by this hidden library, sneaking around at night with a concealment spell. Easily sneaking past the guards in front of the forbidden library, Lloyd manages to break the powerful seal keeping people out, amazed to see the vast library still standing. Taking a look around, Lloyd begins reading some books, suddenly spotting books in particular begin to float around him. Unveiling its dragon head, the book introduces itself as Grimoire, asking Lloyd to unseal it. Knowing Grimoire is the monster Silpha spoke about, Lloyd grows skeptical seeing Grimoire offer Lloyd some gold. Inspecting the gold, Lloyd says he knows Grimoire used creation magic along with some dust to make the gold, shocking Grimoire. Hearing that Lloyd plans on strengthening the seal on the demon, Grimoire gets terrified, stating that he has calmed down and no longer wants to wipe out the world, but Lloyd isn't buying it. Desperate, the demon offers to teach Lloyd some ancient magic, but that finally gets Lloyd to listen. Yearning to learn more, Lloyd instantly dispels Grimoire's current seal, surprising the demon as he fires off a devastating ancient spell at Lloyd, shredding the surrounding library. As the smoke clears, the demon is horrified to see Lloyd has erected a perfect barrier, a spell that consumes and nullifies Grimoire's volley of ancient spells. Getting hot and steamy, Lloyd reaches out to the remaining residue of ancient magic around his barrier. allowing the magic to tear away at his finger as Lloyd begs Grimoire to show him more. Pissed, Grimoire duplicates his head, beginning to cast a dual spell, but once again Lloyd's barrier perfectly blocks it. Inspecting the spell, Lloyd knows that such a spell can only be cast by demons with two mouths, but it's simply an advanced version of the same spell from earlier. Terrified at Lloyd's capabilities, Grimoire attempts to flee, but Lloyd has preemptively constructed barriers to keep anything else from being destroyed. Trapping the demon in one of his barriers, Lloyd lets loose a fire spell of his own, burning up the demon all whilst trapped in one of Lloyd's barriers. After a while, Lloyd realizes that Grimoire is still alive, asking Grimoire to wait as Lloyd reverts all the damage done to the library. Amazed by Lloyd's amazing feats, Grimoire decides to call Lloyd Master, but Lloyd is more curious as to why demons can't be slain with magic. Seeing as he is no match, Grimoire offers to be Lloyd's familiar, only to transform into a cuter form. Offering to sit inside Lloyd's pocket, Grimoire takes the chance to dive into Lloyd's mind, mortified by the dense mana a mere child has. Knowing that he stands no chance, Grimoire asks to be called Grim, choosing to obey Lloyd's every command for now. Several days later, a blonde boy suits up like normal, heading through the mansion only to enter the library. As Grim hides, Lloyd greets his big brother Albert, both heading outside to see Albert training. Casting a small spell, Albert knocks down his target flawlessly, something Lloyd expected since Albert is the second prince, both smart and physically capable. Seeing as Albert wants Lloyd to show off what he's got, Lloyd gladly obliges, but not wanting to draw too much attention, Lloyd states he'll only graze the targets. Firing off multiple spells, Lloyd successfully tricks the onlookers into believing Lloyd isn't as competent as Albert, but Lloyd is more curious about adding spin to each of his magic spells. With Albert briefly glaring at Lloyd, Albert asks that Lloyd use the training area as he likes, heading elsewhere with his party. Now alone, Lloyd gets excited, wanting to mimic Grim's dual incantation with two heads. Although Grim states that only demons can cast such a dual spell, Lloyd gets an idea, absorbing Grim into his palm to act like a second mouth. Impressed that Lloyd knew of such a technique, Grim and Lloyd begin chanting simultaneous spells, but instantly get freaked out not recognizing the spell Lloyd is chanting. Pausing, Grim demands to know what spell Lloyd is casting, shocked to hear Lloyd was trying a spell stack, purposely mixing multiple spells to have them cast simultaneously. Hearing that Lloyd was trying to stack on 100 spells at once, Grim yells that only 2 to 3 spells can be stacked, otherwise the incantation would take too long. Understanding the situation, Lloyd takes over Grim's mouth, both taking a deep breath only for both mouths to begin chanting powerful spells. Seeing as Lloyd is folding together the essence of two magic types itself, Grim fears that the output would be devastating, watching as Lloyd incredibly unleashes a dual spell that ruptures into the skies. At the same time, Albert's retainers wonder why Albert spends so much time with a talentless boy like Lloyd, but Albert corrects them, stating that Lloyd had intentionally grazed all the targets the same way, believing that Lloyd will become great sage one day. With one of the retainers refusing to believe so, we cut outside to see Lloyd has massacred the surrounding area, even tearing a hole through the stratosphere to reveal the constellations themselves. Briefly admiring the sky, Lloyd rushes to repair the clouds, returning the nighttime back to daytime. The next day, Grim shows off the newspaper reporting on a mysterious phenomenon tearing apart the skies, but Lloyd is more fixated on an A-ranked adventure conquering a dungeon and bringing back loot. Wanting to explore a dungeon of his own, Grim struggles to hold back Lloyd, but Lloyd reassures Grim that he's got everything figured out. Taking out an acorn, Lloyd casts a growth spell, creating an exact clone of himself that mimics his movements. Although Grim is impressed, Lloyd is still worried, knowing that Silpha observes and tracks every bit of growth Lloyd experiences, meaning a mere dummy clone won't trick everyone. Getting an idea, Lloyd successfully manages to escape the castle undetected, asking Grim if everything is fine on his end. It turns out that Lloyd had placed Grim's soul into his clone's body, all whilst absorbing Grim's body into his palm. Now that Lloyd's clone is more lifelike, Lloyd successfully tricks the maids, but Grim wonders if he can cause a mess while Lloyd is gone. Sadly, since Lloyd can still communicate with Grim, Lloyd thanks Grim for all the help, flustering Grim as he chooses to make Lloyd proud. Having flown far enough from the castle, Lloyd wonders where he can find a dungeon, suddenly halting as he spots a pink-haired girl fleeing from some monsters. In an instant, the girl sends one of the monsters flying, blitzing around only to begin dismantling the monsters, finishing off with an energy barrier that shreds the monsters. Having witnessed everything, Lloyd recognizes the girl's techniques as a form of chi, something martial artists use. Having detected Lloyd, the girl calls Lloyd to show himself, but when Lloyd hesitates, the girl marks Lloyd as an enemy rushing to his location. Not wanting to unveil his identity as the seventh prince, Lloyd manages to come up with a disguise, created using Lloyd's current looks and Albert's physical structure. Lloyd takes on the name of Robert, learning the girl's name is Dao, having completely fallen for a cute guy like Lloyd. Having been locked away due to her training, Dao states that she'll make Robert her boyfriend no matter what, agreeing to accompany Lloyd into a nearby dungeon since she is a B-ranked adventurer. Upon entering the dungeon, Dao begins carving through the monsters, but sadly Lloyd is more interested in the shiny ores nearby. Venturing deeper, the two strike up a conversation, learning that Dao had been traveling alone for a while. Whipping up a quick meal, Lloyd asks about Dao's chi techniques, impressing Dao since chi is very similar to mana as chi circulates based on breathing techniques. Dao takes the chance to flirt with Lloyd, but gets surprised seeing Lloyd beginning to breathe strangely, realizing Lloyd was trying to mimic her chi breathing. Warning Lloyd against it, Dao can't help but notice how stern Lloyd is about learning chi breathing, agreeing to teach Lloyd anything she knows, which earns her a smile from Lloyd. At the same time, Grim can't help but giggle at how vast Lloyd's obsession with magic is, suddenly realizing that Silpha has appeared. Back in the dungeon, Dao shows off a chi blast, easily destroying the boss of the dungeon only to point Lloyd to the final treasure chest. Lloyd grows curious as to the overall build of the treasure chest itself, something Dao finds adorable, but on top of things Dao notices Lloyd's breathing has grown stable, celebrating as Dao has finally found a perfect match that her family has to approve of. Finally opening up the chest, a mysterious blade appears, cutting down on Dao, but Lloyd manages to read the attack, pulling Dao aside. As a pool of darkness spreads from the chest, a lich appears, exciting Lloyd as a more worthy dungeon boss has appeared. Exuding a cold aura, Dao begins to panic, asking Lloyd to leave the dungeon first, but when Lloyd refuses, Dao is forced to forcibly push Lloyd out of the dungeon. Evading the creature's strange magic, Dao states that a lich is a creature even a ranked adventurers struggle with, therefore she plans on stalling the creature long enough for Lloyd to escape. Flying through the air, Lloyd is sad as he wanted to watch the lich in action, but erecting several barriers, Lloyd halts his movements. When Lloyd asks for Grim's advice, Lloyd notices Grim is barely responding, begging Lloyd to come home. At the same time, Dao grows more fatigued, looking for an opening to escape herself, but the lich suddenly speaks up, having identified Dao's chi technique. The lich scoffs at Dao's inferior technique to magic, annoying Dao as she states that Lloyd was the only person that thought of chi as interesting, unlike every magic user Dao ran into. Breathing in, Dao bolts forward, clashing into the lich's barrier, but having anticipated such a thing, Dao begins to fire off hundreds of punches, ultimately breaking a hole in the lich's barrier. Collapsing to the ground, Dao knows she has completely exhausted her energy, hopelessly watching as the lich appears behind her, mocking her pathetic attempt. Choosing to end the battle, the lich fires off another shard of magic, but Lloyd appears, nonchalantly blocking the spell along with reassuring Dao that he's here to help. Seeing as Lloyd needs to return home to Grim quickly, both the lich and Lloyd begin chanting spells, but in an instant Lloyd dashes behind the lich, a technique the lich doesn't recognize. Firing off a volley at Lloyd, the lich watches as Lloyd begins combining the techniques for mana and chi, taking a deep breath only to combine a movement spell with chi's breathing technique. Dashing around the lich, Lloyd notices the lich firing more magic at his barrier, but Lloyd's barrier easily defends, giving Lloyd more time to perfect his breathing. Seeing as his own barrier is in the way, Lloyd shatters his own barrier, accelerating further, as he maneuvers around the dungeon, all whilst evading the lich's magic. Finally condensing two techniques into one, Lloyd counters the lich's magic with magic he just created, firing off hundreds of slashes all whilst perfecting the spell's speed and sharpness. Terrified to see a mage using chi, the lich attempts to hold on, but seeing Lloyd's technique shredding his spells, the lich is forced to erect a barrier, but Lloyd's technique cuts clean through both the barrier and the lich itself. Dazzled by Lloyd's show of strength, Dao and Lloyd finally claim the dungeon's treasure, disappointed to see an old rusty blade infused with mana in the chest. Out of nowhere the dungeon begins to crumble, beginning to retract the treasure chest as it allows Lloyd and Dao to keep the treasure itself. Wanting to inspect the treasure chest itself, Lloyd sticks around to take the chest as well, but they are both forced to escape before the dungeon closes. Outside, Dao asks about Lloyd's new technique he created, something Lloyd isn't sure of himself, but Dao recognizes it as a secret chi technique even she can't use. As Lloyd flies off, Dao promises to grow stronger so that Lloyd can finally pay more attention to her, but Dao forgets to ask where she can find Lloyd. Flying through different regions, Lloyd finally returns home, spotting his clone all beat up. Grim reveals that Silpha had asked for a sparring match like usual, but grew disappointed seeing how weak Lloyd's clone had gotten, beating his clone senselessly. Showing off the dungeon's knife to Grim, Lloyd douses the knife with hot water, only to scrape off a layer of mana essence. Lloyd explains the mana essence is used to enchant any weapon, with the dungeon blade in particular being enchanted with a power booster. Placing the mana essence into a flask with water, Lloyd shakes up the flask, only to cast a purification spell in order to extract the ingredients of the mana essence. Revealed to be a mixture of oil, silver and hematite, Grim recognizes the ingredients as materials from a monster core, giving Lloyd the idea to create more essence since he had retrieved the dungeon's core in the form of the treasure chest. Needing silver, Lloyd rushes to ask his father for a bag of silver coins, only to begin melting the silver down. Next Lloyd spars with Silpha for a wager, managing to catch Silpha off guard with a sneak attack combined with some magic, but Silpha had reacted fast enough, appearing from one of Lloyd's creations, only to defeat Lloyd. Even after losing, Silpha agrees to give Lloyd a jar of oil, scaring Grim as Silpha was even able to defeat Lloyd with her pure swordsmanship skills alone. With all the ingredients needed, Grim and Lloyd complete the mana essence, rushing to Albert to ask for a weapon to enchant. Seeing as his adorable Lloyd is requesting something of him, Albert asks for his knights to hand over their weapons, all immediately offering Lloyd all their weapons to enchant. The knights know that enchanting weapons usually go horribly, having no faith in the 10-year-old Lloyd to enchant their weapons, but having heard all of the knights mocking his master, Grim gets fired up to prove the knights wrong. As Lloyd begins layering on 2 to 3 enchantments, Lloyd unfortunately shatters the first blade, being too weak to withstand Lloyd's enchantments. Soldiering on, Lloyd works through the night, only to report to Albert that he managed to enchant 50 out of 120 swords, frightening Albert as even the greatest enchanter has only a 10% success rate. Inspecting the blades, one of the knights refused to believe Lloyd enchanted the blades, but when the knight goes to sheath his blade, his holster is suddenly cut into 2 by the newly enchanted sword. Spotting glowing blades in particular, Albert is mesmerized by the enchantments, offering Lloyd to join him on a monster hunt given by their father. Heading out of town early the next day, Lloyd accompanies Albert and Silpha, all heading towards a forest via carriage. Lloyd asks where the monsters they are hunting will be, excited to hear the monsters reside near a lake, as Lloyd can finally see how strong his enchantments are. As Silpha admires Lloyd's adorable expressions, Albert can't help but tease Silpha for clinging onto Lloyd too much, but Albert is silenced seeing Silpha draw her sword. Just then, Silpha detects creatures approaching, spotting that the monsters are all wielding steel equipment. Excited, the knights protecting Lloyd and Albert all rush into formations, ready to test out their new enchanted gear, but Grim can't help but notice Lloyd is using a chi breathing technique that allows him to detect all objects in his surroundings, plus Lloyd always has his barrier spell ready. Seeing the knights engage the monster, the knights flawlessly cut through the creatures, all thanks to Lloyd's enchantments. Praising Lloyd, Albert declares that Lloyd truly is a prodigy, but they both suddenly spot a monster rushing them. Before the two can react, Dao appears, dispatching the creature. Having sensed a cute guy nearby, Dao had rushed over, crouching beside Lloyd as she pointed out how Lloyd is using chi breathing techniques as they speak, plus Lloyd looks very similar to Robert. As Dao senses another attacker from behind, Silpha is forced to save her, demanding that Dao step away from her precious Lloyd. Stopping the girls from fighting, Albert asks Dao to accompany them, all setting up camp for the night near a lake. Thanking Dao for escorting them, Dao points out how although Albert is cute, Albert wasn't the cute guy she was detecting. Hiding from Dao, Lloyd realizes it's his chi breathing that may blow his cover, choosing to lay low and hide in his tent for the rest of the night, but Lloyd suddenly realizes that Silpha was changing in his tent. Demanding to know why Silpha is sharing a room with him, Silpha states that she is the only person that can protect Lloyd, trapping Lloyd between her thighs. Entering the tent, Dao is flustered seeing Silpha trapping Lloyd under her body, swiftly evading a dagger thrown by Silpha. As the girls begin to bicker and argue, Lloyd manages to sneak away, but Albert teases Lloyd for attracting so many girls. Albert points out how Silpha has changed a lot ever since she started looking after Lloyd, shaking as he remembers something, but at the same time Silpha and Dao beat up the knights watching them arguing. As Silpha puts on some clothes, Dao says she has been hired to fix up a nearby shrine, but before Dao can leave, a monster appears smashing up a portion of the campsite. As everyone prepares to engage the creature, they all recognize it to be a bear wolf, but as the knights begin attacking the creature, Grim is seen acting weird due to the broken shrine nearby. As Dao distracts the creature, she buys enough time for Albert to draw his sword, suddenly casting an infernal spell that incinerates the wolf in one shot. Surprising everyone, they all thank Lloyd for Albert's newly enchanted sword, but Grimm finally reveals that the nearby shrine used to seal a powerful demon. As the smoke clears from Albert's explosion, the corpse of the wolf along with various other monsters suddenly appear, giving rise to Demon Pazuzu, who had been hiding in the wolf's mouth. Pissed that people are slaying its servants, Pazuzu has its monsters attack, but Albert soon realizes the monsters have insane regeneration. Lloyd asks if Grimm and Pazuzu are friends, but Grimm says they aren't, but Grimm is able to detect that Pazuzu is puppeteering the monsters with its dense mana along with regenerating their wounds. Intrigued, Lloyd asks Grimm to teach him the same mana transmutation technique as Pazuzu, but at the same time Pazuzu begins insulting the humans for falling slowly in the hands of his beast army. When Pazuzu begins to insult Lloyd, Silpha suddenly snaps, asking Lloyd to remain hiding. With Silpha's terrifying aura erupting, Silpha is offered a role to join Pazuzu's servants, but Silpha scoffs at the idea of serving a disgusting creature, declaring she'll slay Pazuzu. Giddy, Pazuzu reminds Silpha that the monsters will continue to heal as long as he channels mana into them. Seeing Silpha shake, Pazuzu suspects that Silpha is aware of Demon's vast mana pools, but Silpha instead points out that Pazuzu's breath stinks. Annoyed, Pazuzu rushes Silpha with his wolf servant, but in an instant Silpha severs the wolf's legs before it could move. As Pazuzu begins to regenerate the wolf's legs, Albert and the others realize the other monsters have stopped moving, reasoning that Pazuzu can't control the creatures as well when it's focusing on itself. Off to the side, Grimm points out that transmuting mana is quite difficult, as the mana needs to change to fit the target. Not even surprised, Lloyd manages to transmute a flower with his mana, even matching the color and scent of the flower. Out of nowhere, Silpha slams Pazuzu and his servant to the ground, picking up one of Lloyd's enchanted swords only to prepare to finish off the demon. Pazuzu can't help but wonder what type of maid Silpha is, choosing to insult Lloyd in order to get Silpha to drop her guard. Seeing an opening, Pazuzu manages to clamp onto Silpha with his wolf servant, but Silpha has used the opportunity to get close to the demon, revealing her dual sword techniques that shred Pazuzu's body from the inside. Continuing to hack away at the monster, Lloyd takes the chance to memorize Silpha's body shape, all whilst Silpha berates the demon for insulting Lloyd. Glaring at the demon on its knees, Silpha watches as Albert and the others take down the remaining beasts, all staying vigilant until Silpha slays Pazuzu. Out of nowhere, a potent smog fills the air, bringing all the humans to their knees as Pazuzu seems to have evolved. Pazuzu states that he has escaped his seal for 100 years already, annoyed that all his hard work nurturing his servants have all gone to waste. With a single slash, Pazuzu knocks Silpha back, all whilst Albert helplessly watches. As Silpha struggles to breathe, Pazuzu flies in for the final blow, but Dao intercepts the attack, revealed to be unaffected by the smog. Seeing Silpha finally collapsing due to Pazuzu's smog, Dao stays alert, barely able to detect Pazuzu appear behind her. Pazuzu demands to know how Dao is unaffected by his aura, but seeing Dao react, Pazuzu realizes Dao is using a strange breathing technique. Having been bound by Pazuzu, Dao is forced to kick and blast Pazuzu away, attempting to stabilize her breathing, but suddenly realizes the monsters have regenerated. Barely able to stop the jaws of one of the beasts from clamping down, Dao watches as Pazuzu rises back up, emitting its smog as it demands Dao serve it. Seeing her life flash before her eyes, Dao manages to survive Pazuzu's aura, declaring that her savior will arrive soon. Having heard enough, Pazuzu's servant bites down on Dao, prompting Pazuzu to head over to retrieve Silpha's unconscious body. Declaring that he'll make Silpha his slave, Pazuzu reveals that he had slayed his servant's parents, only to have the monsters believe Pazuzu was their original parents, something Lloyd states is terrible. Realizing that Lloyd is unaffected, Pazuzu demands to know who Lloyd is, spotting Grimm, a fellow demon who is serving a mere child. Before Grimm can warn Pazuzu of Lloyd's abilities, Pazuzu sends his servants to attack Lloyd, but seeing as this is the perfect chance, Lloyd begins transmuting his mana. Creating the picture of a field of flowers, Lloyd manages to calm the beasts, briefly cuddling with them only to retrieve the unconscious Dao, covering her up with his jacket. Impressed to see Lloyd as a competent mage, Pazuzu tries to order his servants around, but the beasts instead turn their fangs on Pazuzu, tearing away at the demon that killed their parents. Having sustained a decent amount of damage, Pazuzu chooses to dispose of his own servants, slamming them together only to kick them to the ground. Seeing Pazuzu harming his own servants, Lloyd wonders why demons can't be defeated with magic, something Grimm mentions is probably since it's never been done before. As Pazuzu's mana begins to swell up, the surrounding area begins to perish, but Lloyd is more curious as to how much mana it will take to defeat a demon. Revealing his own mana pool, Pazuzu suddenly freezes at the sight of Lloyd's mana, something Grim knew Lloyd was concealing and is the reason Pazuzu's smog didn't affect Lloyd whatsoever. Finally able to let loose, Lloyd attempts to trap Pazuzu in a barrier, but Pazuzu barely manages to evade. Realizing that Lloyd is attempting to cage him, Pazuzu attempts to flee, but Lloyd is dead set on trapping Pazuzu with his barriers. Floating all throughout the skies, Pazuzu continues to evade capture, all whilst Grim learns Lloyd is capable of casting 20 spells at once, but making use of Grim, Lloyd increases his spell output. Seeing as there is no space in the skies to flee, Pazuzu dives into the sea, terrified to see Lloyd is still hunting him down in water. Proud of himself, Pazuzu manages to hold out, believing that he's finally escaped, but as he breaches ocean floors, Pazuzu realizes Lloyd had been toying with him this entire time, having been trapped in one of Lloyd's larger barriers. Attempting to find a way out of Lloyd's cage, Pazuzu refuses to be one of Lloyd's lab rats, but Lloyd is confused at how hypocritical Pazuzu is, deducing that Pazuzu had used his servants as lab rats as well. Seeing Lloyd prepare multiple spells, Pazuzu begins begging for his life. Making use of the strongest fire, wind, earth and water spells, Lloyd forms a 100-length sequence, boosting the spell's cast time by 3-fold, only to surround Pazuzu with his incantation. Unleashing his incantation, Lloyd proudly claims that he is currently casting 240 spells per minute, but not even 5 minutes pass before Lloyd is forced to halt his incantation. Seeing Pazuzu drained, Grim points out that magic is like light and sound to humans. Seeing as Pazuzu has completely given up, Lloyd focuses on Albert and the others who have begun to wake up, rushing to their side to come up with an excuse, all whilst Grim and Pazuzu have a chat. Grim advises that mages that have the most fun will ultimately live the longest, something Pazuzu also realizes as he finally passes away. Seeing the ashes of Pazuzu, Grim takes the chance to absorb what remains, able to restore a fraction of what was lost. Back with Lloyd, Lloyd seems to have convinced everyone that a powerful mage by the name of Robert defeated the demon, exciting Dao as she demands to know where Robert is. As the gang return to report their hunt to the king scolds Albert for not being more prepared for the monster hunt, wondering where Robert and Dao are wanting to reward them. Sadly, Albert reveals that Robert was never seen by anyone, as for Dao she ran off out of nowhere wanting to reunite with Robert. Changing topics, Albert asks for his father to consider Lloyd as a possible candidate for the throne, stating that Lloyd's genius with enchantments may prove fruitful for a ruler. Impressed to hear his seventh son is so gifted, the king asks if Lloyd would join his brothers to fight for the throne, but Lloyd flat out rejects the offer. Later that day, Lloyd is seen playing with a fluffy bearwolf, having followed Lloyd home from the forest. Grim begins to get jealous seeing how much Lloyd is admiring his new pet, choosing to fluff himself up to get Lloyd's attention. Seeing as Silpha is approaching, Lloyd quickly stuffs Grim inside the bearwolf's fur, only to tell Silpha that his new pet will be called Shiro. As Silpha and Lloyd brainstorm tricks they can teach to Shiro, Albert and the king both chat about Lloyd's future, both expecting great things from Lloyd. Getting to work, Lloyd manages to teach Shiro basic tricks, but wonders how he should train Shiro to execute more tougher actions. Having tried to infuse his mana with more specific commands, Shiro unfortunately isn't able to understand Lloyd's complex task, prompting Lloyd and Silpha to wonder if there is a monster expert that can help. As both remember Princess Elise's, heading over to her garden tower. Grim learns that Elise is the 6th princess of Saloon, being Lloyd's older sister by 3 years. Out of nowhere, Elise pounces on Lloyd, wrestling him only to give him a greeting smooch. Seeing Lloyd knocked out, Elise's maid Eris reprimands Elise for going too far with Lloyd. Turning to see Shiro, Elise can't help but cuddle with the adorable creature, but seeing this Lloyd asks if Elise can show off one of her own monsters. Out of nowhere, a lesser Fenrir appears, snatching away Silpha's headband. Lloyd is shocked, seeing as the monster slipped past his detection. Lloyd is intrigued as to what command Elise gave to the Fenrir in order to have it time its approach. Asking for Elise to teach him all she knows, Elise gladly obliges, revealing that a deep bond with any animal will involve lots of love. Demonstrating her powers, Elise calls for the animals to surround her, stating that love is a technique anyone can learn. As Elise sends her animals to annoy Silpha and Eris, but they both spot Lloyd as calmly taming some animals of his own. Having not considered using love before, Lloyd begins to think of how he should love Shiro, all whilst Silpha dreams of the day Lloyd shows affection for her. Reconstructing Elise's taming technique, Lloyd notices that Elise had channeled mana into her animals via her head, allowing her to communicate with nothing but thoughts. Trying it out, Lloyd manages to establish a connection with Shiro, having him run circles only to leap into the air. Happy to see it worked, Lloyd and Shiro cuddle for a bit, all whilst Aris praises Lloyd for replicating a monster tamer's technique. Elise cries that love is the most important factor for taming monsters, something Lloyd doesn't disagree with, especially since the tamer must get to know the monster they want to tame first. Seeing Lloyd adorably explain love, Aris, Silpha and Elise all adore Lloyd, rushing to his side only to begin loving him. As Lloyd begins heading back, Silpha says they'll be sparring again today, but out of nowhere Albert appears, asking to borrow Lloyd for a bit. Albert calls for Lloyd's older brother Dian, the fourth prince, to show himself. Heading to a small smeltery, Dian demands to see Lloyd enchant a blade for himself, but Albert diffuses the situation by revealing that Dian always wanted to be a blacksmith, even traveling to the nation of Bartram to learn smithing when he was 10. Sitting down, Dian watches as Lloyd begins enchanting a sword, refusing to believe Lloyd has learnt so much at such a young age, but when Lloyd finishes up his enchantment, Dian can't help but tremble seeing how magnificent Lloyd's enchantments are. Getting excited, Dian states that Lloyd can help Dian achieve his dream of creating the ultimate spellbound sword, a weapon that has enchantments built into it and layered onto it. Dian reveals that he was never capable of casting magic like most mages, therefore Dian wants even normal humans to wield magic when they swing a spellbound sword around. Only interested in the production process of a sword, Lloyd agrees to help Dian out, both getting to work as Dian sets the goal of creating a sword that can shoot fire. First Dian heats up a piece of steel, asking Lloyd to first layer on a fraction of the fire incantation, but the steel immediately shatters. As Lloyd attempts a weaker enchantment, Dian can't help but notice Silpha and Shiro interested, having Silpha help out with hammering the steel, but sadly Lloyd's powerful enchantments are still too strong for the piece of steel. Completely baffled, Lloyd racks his head for an alternative solution, reassured by Dian that Lloyd can try as many enchantments as he likes, especially since Dian bought a bulk of mana essence for cheap. Suddenly realizing something, Lloyd inspects the mana essence, realizing that the hematite in the essence is way too weak. Lloyd asks if Dian has any spare hematite lying around. Upon hearing that Dian doesn't, Silpha offers to accompany Lloyd to a dungeon, both heading to the Adventurers Guild. Entering the guild, Lloyd greets Katerina the receptionist, only to fill out a form for his details. Next, Lloyd is asked to place his hands on a crystal ball, something Lloyd knows is used to measure one's stats. Fearing that his current power level will destroy the orb, Lloyd begins compressing his mana, managing to achieve an overall rank of E. As the other adventurers laugh at Lloyd's poor rank, the receptionist points out that Lloyd has a magic stat of A, making him comparable to the mighty Silver Blader, something the other adventurers refuse to accept. Legend has it that the Silver Blader carved into every dungeon they entered, achieving an A- rank status only to disappear. Seeing the adventurers continue to mock Lloyd, Silpha can't help but scare the men a bit, revealing herself to be the Silver Blader. When Silpha attempts to re-register herself, the receptionist sadly states that Silpha would be demoted to C rank, unfortunate since every party needs a B rank to accompany them. At that moment, Dao appears offering to assist, but Silpha quickly ignores her. Silpha learns that Dao had failed to find Robert, even searching various dungeons for him, only to learn that Dao had been promoted to A rank as well. Dao demands a date with Albert as reward for their upcoming dungeon hunt, but as Silpha retrieves Lloyd's jacket from Dao, Lloyd admires how interesting of a life Silpha must have had in the past. Silpha reveals that in her entire lifetime, she had failed to take down a ragtag group known as the Assassin's Guild. Having picked out a dungeon, the gang immediately set out, explaining their goals to Dao, only to spot the core of the dungeon. At the same time, Albert checks in on Dian, happy to see Dian and Lloyd are getting along well, but Albert states that a war will break out soon. Trembling at the thought of being unable to help, Dian declares that he'll create the spell-bound swords to help his kingdom, spotting Lloyd and the others returning. Getting back to work, Dian and Lloyd manage to finish off their first blade, heading straight to the training area only to eradicate their test targets, terrifying everyone. Having named the blade Dillord, Lloyd heads to bed, having spent the entire day fine-tuning the blades along with mass-producing them. Rewarding Shiro with some belly rubs, Lloyd notes how Albert seemed awfully stiff throughout the day, but suddenly Lloyd detects a strange presence in their garden. Impressed, Shiro wasn't able to detect the mysterious presence. As the mysterious figure begins running around the garden, Lloyd suddenly appears, asking to have a chat. When the figure attempts to flee, Lloyd simply erects a barrier, cutting off any escape. Seeing no other option, the figure unveils their hood, apologizing as she blasts Lloyd with a sweet scent, but Lloyd realizes it's poison. Attempting to cleanse the negative effects, Lloyd suddenly collapses, having failed to neutralize the girl's poison. Lloyd deduces that the girl is using a new type of toxin, hearing stories about those with strange abilities, people known as the Blighted. The girl confirms herself to be the poison Blighted, Ren the poison moth. Heading over to Lloyd's barrier, Ren instantly shatters it with a kick, having weakened it with her poison. Ren reassures Lloyd he won't pass away, warning Lloyd of the side effects he may experience in the next few days. Just like that, Ren disappears, allowing Lloyd to finally rest a bit. Having seen everything, Grim learns that Lloyd is actually cancelling out Ren's poison with a breathing technique, wondering why Lloyd didn't just capture her. Lloyd reveals that he plans on tailing Ren to her hideout, recognizing Ren as one of the 6 Assassin Guild members. Lloyd gets excited wondering what the other members' special abilities are, praising Ren for concealing her presence so well, but Lloyd has already figured out their trick. As Lloyd rushes off, Silpha and Shiro barely miss Lloyd, cutting over to the assassin members as they berate Ren for getting caught so easily. Ren states that she has discovered that the royals are mass-producing spellbound swords, a sign that there is a war coming. When Ren tries to make suggestions, the assassin members cut Ren off, reminding Ren that their leader Jade is already gone. Just then, the members detect someone watching them, forcing Lloyd to reveal himself as the members mention how they've heard great things from the 7th Prince. Seeing as Lloyd has discovered them, they have no choice but to take Lloyd out, but Lloyd is excited to see what the enemy has in store, releasing his barrier. Taking a fighting stance that mimics Dao's, Lloyd draws in a green head man, able to defend against most of his strikes, but suddenly spots one of the man's punches wrap around his arm. Introducing himself as the Warp Blighted, Babylon the Giant Rat. Knowing that Babylon's movements exceed what mages are capable of, Lloyd suddenly realizes someone is behind him, suddenly collapsing to the ground as Crow the Dark Raptor binds him with a curse. Following up, Galia attempts to pummel Lloyd, but Lloyd uses brute strength to escape Crow's curse, but sadly gets entangled in Galilea's spider webs. With no choice, Lloyd ditches his clothes, ecstatic to have run into a user with cursed speech along with people able to translate their mana. Out of nowhere, Lloyd begins evading several slashes from Talia, suddenly spotting Talia impale her own leg, only to feel the pain in his legs as well. Introducing herself as the Pain Blighted, Talia gets weirded out seeing how happy Lloyd is, watching as Lloyd analyzes and reverses Talia's wound both on Talia and himself. Intrigued to see how Talia's reflection magic works, Lloyd traces Silpha's battle style, terrifying the assassin members as they reveal past trauma facing the Silver Blader. With Lloyd's aura erupting, the assassin members all scramble from their positions, but Babylon is Lloyd's first target. As Lloyd catches up to Babylon, Lloyd slams him to the ground, impressed to see Babylon relax his body so as to not sustain too much damage. Appearing around Lloyd, Galilea and Crow pinch him, but Lloyd predicts Crow's cursed speech attack, accidentally cursing and blasting Galilea into Talia instead. Before Crow can chant another curse, Lloyd equips 2 blades, dicing up and slamming Crow into the ground, perfectly mimicking Silpha's techniques. Off to the side, Galilea struggles to separate himself from Talia, but since his webs have bound them together, Talia's clothes are accidentally pulled apart. Seeing an opening, Lloyd rushes to attack Talia, warned by Talia that the damage will be reflected onto Lloyd himself, but Lloyd could care less. Talia is slammed into a wall, making Lloyd euphoric, finally experiencing pain for the first time in a while. Seeing as Galilea has managed to sneak up behind Lloyd, Lloyd employs Dao's martial arts, blasting Galilea into a nearby wall as well, terrifying Ren. Before Lloyd can engage onto Ren, Galilea asks for Lloyd to leave Ren alone, revealing that Ren is unable to control her toxins. Lloyd suddenly realizes that all the assassin members aren't really good at controlling their powers, watching as Galilea rushes him, but Lloyd suddenly hits Galilea with a special attack. Pissed, Ren releases her toxins, attempting to avenge Galilea, but Galilea reveals he is fine. Lloyd states he has engraved Galilea's curse directly into their body, giving him more control of their curses, bringing Galilea into tears. Applying the same trick onto the others, the members begin to celebrate, finally able to toggle their powers on and off. Off to the side, Ren is seen holding back her tears, finally able to wear whatever she likes without accidentally releasing her poison. Seeing the others taking care of Lloyd, Ren reminds everyone that Lloyd and his family are producing weapons to spark a war, but Grim brushes them off as mere rumors. Before Grim and Ren can bicker some more, the others mention how they should at least tell Lloyd about their past, revealing that they have a leader by the name of Jade known as the Phantom Blighted and has the ability to teleport. Flashing back, one day Jade had reappeared out of nowhere, having been teleported to Egypt but had finally made it back to their hideout. Jade shows off their new guild emblem, stating that their Assassin's Guild will take the jobs normal adventurers wouldn't, and upon completion they'll leave behind their emblem to prove to the world they can operate in society as well. Before Jade can add any more, Jade is teleported away, but in the present Galilea points out that the warlord Lordust was preparing may help them figure out Jade's teleportation problem. Out of nowhere, a mysterious envelope appears, but before the contents is revealed, we cut to several minutes later where Silpha and Shiro have busted into the Assassin Guild's hideout. Seeing as Lloyd has left behind a letter, Silpha reports her findings to Albert, who holds back his anguish fearing that the Assassin's Guild has kidnapped Lloyd and brought Lloyd to Lordust. Seeing as Lloyd's clothes are all sticky, Albert and Silpha both declare they'll wage war if it means Lloyd will return safe. Cutting back to when the envelope appeared, Galilea reads that Jade had officially overthrown the rulers of Lordust, making the assassin members celebrate, but inspecting the letter himself, Lloyd can't help but smirk. Immediately heading out, Lloyd sends everyone flying with him towards Jade's location. We learn that Galilea and Ren had asked if Lloyd could help Jade fix his teleportation curse as well, but Lloyd points out that Jade no longer needs him help, since the letter seems to have been perfectly teleported to their location. Lloyd knows that teleportation magic itself is very rare, especially being able to control it, making the members wonder if Jade was lying about his curse this whole time. Regardless, Ren says she still wants to reunite with Jade, exciting Lloyd as he says he'll accompany them. Seeing as Ren is starting to doubt Jade, Lloyd cheers Ren up, making Ren's heart flutter a bit. Having been flying for only 10 minutes, Lloyd is forced to stop, seeing everyone exhausted, but seeing as they need food, Ren runs off into the woods to catch some food. Babylon reveals that Ren grew up in the forest, wanting to show off her skills to Lloyd, but Ren had a tragic past, having accidentally slayed her own parents with her poison. It was then when Jade took her in, and introduced her to everyone, all agreeing to help raise Ren as one of their own. Having spent time designing clothes to neutralize Ren's poison, Ren couldn't help but break down, having finally found a family she can rely on, and even seeing Jade as her big brother. Hearing such a wholesome story, Lloyd says he really wants to meet Jade, surprising Grimm. Right on cue, Ren returns with a dense stew, terrifying everyone as they wonder if a prince like Lloyd should be fed such a food item. Surprisingly, Grimm and Lloyd savors the meal, prompting everyone to join in, enjoying the meal like a family. Flashing back, there was a day when Jade had announced their guild members were all getting bounties, exciting everyone as they are finally being recognized as actual people. Seeing everyone celebrating, Jade reveals that he is actually the third prince to the Lordust family, adding that his family are diabolical people who all fiend for war. Jade mentions how he had planned to use the assassin guilds for his own way to stop his family from inciting war, but seeing as his other members are all calm, Jade wonders why they're not angry at him. The members all remind Jade that they all have hidden pasts as well, therefore they don't really care what Jade's intentions are, as long as Jade remains a family member with everyone. Impressed to hear his guild members are willing to commit crimes for him, Jade states that he must claim the throne by himself, not wanting his assassin members to have to dirty their hands. Jade admits that he may never return, but he promises he'll one day claim the throne for himself and finally grant all outcasts a place to stay. Finally walking the final steps towards Jade's manor, the gang point out how adorable Lloyd is when he is asleep, all reasoning they should go on ahead and leave Lloyd behind, not wanting Lloyd to get caught up in their own personal drama with Jade. Hearing this, Grimm offers to accompany them, knowing that Lloyd can easily fend for himself. Upon climbing the castle walls, the gang are surprised to see a party set up for them, just like what Jade had promised in the letter. Before the gang can head back and retrieve Lloyd, they're interrupted by an egg-shaped looking man, inviting them all into the courtyard where they're officially welcomed as the guest of honor. With everyone in disbelief, Ren hugs Grimm tight, getting nervous to reunite with Jade. Finally, Jade appears nonchalantly, annoying everyone, as they watch Jade switch clothing, relieved to see Jade is the same as before. Stepping forwards, Ren struggles to express all the emotions bottled in her head, but seeing as everything is fine, Grimm begins flying back to Lloyd. Out of nowhere, the surrounding attendees transform all whilst Jade orders everyone to bow down, terrifying the assassin members as they wonder how Jade has Crow's cursed speech, not to mention it's way more powerful. When Ren demands to know what is happening, Jade simply offers the assassin members to the other attendees, allowing the attendees to do what they please with the assassin members. Blasting Jade with a beam, Grimm cries for everyone to run, but before Grimm can do anything else, Jade teleports behind him, kicking and blowing Grimm away. As Jade changes his clothing, we cut to Lloyd, who has finally awoken, spotting a beaten-up Grimm beside him. Grim struggles to explain the situation to Lloyd, all whilst the assassin members realize the attendees before them are actually demons from the netherworld. Appearing beside the members, Jade reveals that he too is being controlled by a demon, Gazarm the Catastrophe from the netherworld. Gazarm reveals that Jade is no longer alive, having struggled to hold on, but eventually Jade was forced to relinquish his body. Hearing all of this, the assassin members get pissed, preparing to unleash onto Gazarm, but Gazarm continues to reveal all the torture methods he performed on Jade in order to ensure Jade's mind would never recover. As the demons begin begging for a body of their own to inhabit, Gazarm warns his minions that Ren's body is quite poisonous, but Gazarm suddenly notices a strange marking on Ren's body. Unable to recognize the spell from Jade's memories alone, Gazarm uses his curse speech, demanding Ren explain, but Ren bites her tongue to silence herself. With Gazarm cursing Ren to sell out the person that placed the spell on her, Ren fights for dear life, suddenly watching as Lloyd's barriers surround all the assassin members, only for an incineration ray to light up the surroundings. Having scared the demons back into their bodies, Lloyd checks on the others, healing Ren's tongue. Lloyd starts by ordering the assassin members to run, knowing that Gazarm is solely after their bodies. As the demons wonder if their master had been killed, Gizmare nonchalantly teleports behind them, ordering his minions to chase after the assassin members, but Lloyd simply blasts the demons to stall them. As two demons appear beside Lloyd, Lloyd continues to monitor Gazarm's every move, watching as Gazarm speaks a death curse that weaves through Lloyd's barrier. Seeing as it's best to dodge, Lloyd analyzes the curse, noting how the curse causes cardiac arrest, and slays the target struck by the curse. Grim advises Lloyd to flee, seeing as Gazarm's cursed speech is a form of transmuted mana, meaning Lloyd's mana barrier can only block spells created from mana, but seeing as transmuted mana is a different form, Lloyd's barrier won't be able to block Gazarm's attacks. Grim also points out Gazarm's mana is quite vast, explaining that demon servants are ranked 10th, whereas Pazuzu was ranked 8th, Grim himself is ranked 3rd but Gazarm is a demon lord, placing himself above rank 1, being able to take on even 100 rank 1 demons alone. Seeing as Gazarm is the real deal, Grim advises Lloyd to flee, but Lloyd chooses to introduce himself to Gazarm. Gazarm remembers Jade had once asked to speak with Lloyd, but regardless they both prepare to enjoy the oncoming battle. Grim continues to beg Lloyd to flee, stating that dense mana will barely scratch a behemoth like Gazarm, but making the first move, Gazarm fires off a small projectile. Instantly shattering 2 layers of Lloyd's barrier, Gazarm grows excited, choosing to fire off a volley of spears that chase Lloyd throughout the castle. As he racks his brain for a solution, Gazarm suddenly appears above him, kicking Lloyd towards his volley of spears, but barely thinking quick enough, Lloyd conjures a stone golem to tank the volley of spear. At the same time, the demons finally catch up to the assassin members, all watching as Babylon scales the castle walls to open the castle gates. Back with Lloyd, Gazarm praises Lloyd for surviving the first wave, beginning to make fun of how weak blighted humans are, to have been born with such immense power but to never know how to control them. Gazarm mentions how Jade's teleportation powers called to him, wondering why blighted humans struggle to live amongst humans when they can offer up their bodies to demons who can make full use of blighted cursed bodies. Seeing as Lloyd is speechless, Gazarm unveils his armory of spears, snapping his fingers, only to teleport a spear into Lloyd's body. Knowing that Lloyd won't be able to react, Gazarm continues to skewer Lloyd with his spears, all whilst Galilea webs the demons. Seeing as the demons are still pursuing them, Crow curses them to fall, allowing Babylon to finally open the castle gate, but seeing as the demons have broken free from the webbing and curse, Talia steps up. Placing the demons in her sight, Talia slashes her own leg, ordering the others to leave without her. Seeing the demons regenerating, Talia simply continues to hack away at her own body, stalling the demons more, but Galilea chooses to shove Crow and Ren through the gate, slamming it only to join Talia. Galilea promises to remain by Talia's side all the way to the very end, giving Talia enough courage to sacrifice her life. It means the demons will disappear as well. Seeing the demons attempting to stop her, Galilea holds them off with his web, watching as Talia cries out, imagining how much pain Jade must have gone through whilst trying to stop Gazarm from invading his mind. With Ren begging for everything to return back to normal, Talia pulls the trigger, all whilst Gazarm mocks Jade's memories of wanting to live peacefully with his friends. Turning to check on Lloyd's skewered corpse, Gazarm realizes he was facing a stone statue all this time, watching as Lloyd appears with a blade aimed at his neck. Nonchalantly teleporting away, Gazarm is amazed to see Lloyd is still standing, but gets thrown off hearing Lloyd wants to move their fight elsewhere. Right on cue, a swarm of fire arrows lay waste to the demons, rescuing Talia and Galilea. As the castle gate is shredded, Albert and the others triumphantly appear, declaring that they'll save Lloyd no matter what. Flashing back, we see Silpha training with her sword, easily carving through training dolls. Unfortunately, the blade Silpha wields bends before she can unleash her full strength, curious as to whether a demon may be able to draw out her full strength. Seeing Albert and the gang have arrived, Ren and the others become excited, but suddenly Silpha and Albert turn their attention to the assassin members. Demanding to know where Lloyd is, Silpha states she'll decapitate the assassin member for every minute they keep silent, prompting Ren to reveal that Lloyd is fighting someone in the castle. Before Ren can explain who, Babylon reminds Ren that Lloyd wants to keep his powers a secret from his family, so Ren mentions how Lloyd is simply fighting with a very weak person. Seeing as it's an obvious lie, Silpha prepares to decapitate Ren, but Albert wonders if they should start with an adult first. Seeing as no one believes them, Ren reveals that Lloyd is fighting to avenge Jade, one of their family members, but right then a demon rushes Ren. Luckily, Elise and her Fenrir gobbles up the demon, confirming that Ren is indeed telling the truth. Satisfied for now, Albert orders Silpha to go on ahead and support Lloyd, but Ren chooses to cling onto Silpha, refusing to allow Lloyd's true powers to be exposed. Out of nowhere, a volley of spears destroy the bridge the gang are standing on, forcing the demons to swim to land, but the gang realize the demons are trying to trap them from behind. As Albert and the gang rush through the gates, we see Lloyd and Gazarm making some small talk, only for Gazarm to continue pursuing Lloyd with his spears, all whilst Grim wonders why Lloyd is holding a sword. Seeing as Albert and the others are occupying the demons, Lloyd chooses to focus his full attention on Gazarm, all whilst Albert wonders how he can slay these demons. Since the demons are recovering all damage from the spellbound swords, Albert decides he'll have Silpha and Liru the Fenrir deal with them, but at the same time, Silpha tries to order Shiro to jump across the destroyed bridge in order to reach Lloyd. At first Shiro is hesitant, but seeing as his master is in trouble, Shiro jumps as far as he can, ultimately falling into the water below. Before Silpha can give it a go, the egg-shaped man appears, slashing at Silpha, but Silpha easily defends with her dual blades. The demon is impressed at Silpha's swordplay, choosing to reveal itself as a rank 8 demon, a master of the sword the demon blade form. Back with Albert, he continues to barrage the demons with their fire swords, suddenly realizing a demon has snuck up behind him. Luckily, Babylon appears, instantly dislocating the demon's head, only to introduce himself to Albert. Albert wonders how Babylon can slay the demons so easily, but Babylon reveals that Albert resembles Jade, adding that the demons have robbed the humans of their bodies, meaning the best thing they can do is put their bodies to rest. Respecting Babylon's words, Albert finally unsheathes his magic sword, sympathizing to those who had their bodies stolen, only to release a destructive fire spell that covers the demons in flames. At the same time, Silpha and the egg-shaped demon equally match each other's moves, both unleashing devastating moves that cancel each other out, all whilst the assassin members watch in awe. With both swordsmen taking a break, they both seem to be wounded, but the egg-shaped demon simply recovers any wounds. Having seen Silpha's swordplay, the demon declares he'll take Silpha's body, switching his stance, only to appear before Silpha. Barely able to evade the demon's slash, only to hear that the demon's current body belonged to a skilled swordsman who lived countless years, only to have its body ripped away. Having heard enough, Silpha shows off a new trick, employing the demon's same slashing attack, shocking everyone. Silpha begins mocking the demon for not being able to copy moves like herself, calling for Shiro only to retrieve a blade Lloyd had gifted to her. Cutting back to when Silpha was training, Lloyd had surprised Silpha with a sword, mentioning how the blade is designed to withstand all of Silpha's might. Lloyd states that since demons still rely on a body to exist, a sword that slays the demon's body will still kill the demon, but in some cases when a demon's regenerative powers is too strong, the demon must be killed with a single powerful strike. Surprised, Silpha wonders why Lloyd is giving her this sword, but Lloyd mentions how Silpha always holds back when she fights, knowing that Silpha's current swords can't withstand her full force. Embracing Lloyd, Silpha declares the sword's name to be Demonbane, but the egg-shaped demon can't help but mock the sword's pathetic name. The demon reveals that they had planned from the very start to lure Jade along with the assassin members into giving up their bodies, pissing the assassin members off. Having heard enough, Silpha takes a battle stance, forcing the demon to match her energy, but in an instant, Silpha minces up the demon, ending the duel. Check out one of our other videos on the screen or in the info card above. Subscribe, like and comment.